Good evening, good people of Melbourne. It is 5:30 p.m. on the 14th of April 2026, so we will commence this future Melbourne Committee meeting. I welcome councillors, management and members of the public attending tonight's meeting both in person and virtually. We are meeting on the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, and I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we govern, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung peoples of the Kulin, and pay respect to their elders past and present. We acknowledge and honour the unbroken spiritual, cultural and political connection they have maintained to this unique place for more than 2,000 generations. This meeting is being streamed live and the recording will be published on Council's website by the close of business tomorrow. The unconfirmed minutes of this meeting will also be available from the Council's website as soon as practicable. I request that all mobile phones be turned off or to silent for the duration of the meeting. One apology has been received from Councillor Philip Lay-Lou. Agenda item 2, disclosure of conflicts of interest. If any councillor has a conflict of interest as defined in the Local Government Act in relation to a matter to be considered, please disclose the type and nature of your interest prior to consideration of the item. Moving on to agenda item 3, we have confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. I call on a councillor to move a motion adopting the minutes of open meeting number 24 held on Tuesday the 17th of March 2026. So there's the motion up there. Thank you, Councillor Gladys Liu, for moving. Thank you, Councillor Andrew Rouse, for seconding. I will put that motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand, declare that. Can I just check I declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 4, matters arising from the minutes of the previous meeting. Anything any councillor wants to call out in the minutes from that meeting? No. We move therefore onto submissions and correspondence. The following submissions have been received in accordance with Council's governance rules. In relation to agenda item 6.2, Westgate Tunnel Impacts Update, we have a request to speak from Dr. Kate Kennedy from the Kensington Association, and we have items of correspondence from Kate Kennedy, Carl Hessian, Gemma Gooding, Max Fink and Sybil Gibb. Submitters will be invited to address the committee at the time of the relevant agenda item and it is considered. Moving on to agenda item 5, public questions. A 15-minute period will be provided at the beginning and end of this meeting for members of the public to ask questions. Members of the public may either submit questions in writing or register to ask a question in person or live via audio link. Questions should not be greater than 90 seconds in duration. As at 10 a.m. today, there have been 2 written public questions received. One will be asked in person, and I note that in reading out these questions, we are not attesting to the veracity or factual nature of any statements made. So, moving to questions, I now invite Chris Thrum to ask a question. Chris, you are very familiar to the proceedings here at Town Hall, so you don't need to be reminded that your question should not be greater than 90 seconds in duration. And great to see you back here. And thank you for the great busking work you do around Melbourne and for your passion for live music, the Richmond Football Club, and everything that happens at the racetrack. We are going to play a video.
Saturday, it's going to be Record Store Day, and the 18th of April. And Luke Greenhatch, that blues guitarist you saw there, would encourage everybody to visit record stores during Record Store Day. Rocksteady Records in Melbourne at the corner of Lonsdale and Liver Street at Mitchell House, first floor. It's going to have a culture of bands performing and DJs as well. So the question is, could the Lord Mayor, councillors and the management team consider visiting Rocksteady Records in the next few days, Northside Records and Wax Museum Records to celebrate the vinyl and musical culture of Melbourne, to celebrate Record Store Day as well?
Thank you very much for that question, Chris, and thank you for your passionate support for live music in this town. I'm looking to perhaps Councillor David Griffiths, who does indeed work at the Kensington Bowls Club, to perhaps respond to Chris Thrum and Mark Scott, as well as the Deputy in the Arts Portfolio.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'm flattered that you think I work at the Bowls Club rather than doing what I will be doing tonight, which is going out there to enjoy the fantastic music of the Greenhatch Blues Trio. So for those who may not have heard, if Chris's microphone wasn't on at the start, if you're following along online tonight, the Melbourne Blues Association will be out at the Bowls Club. Luke Greenhatch, the Greenhatch Blues Trio, will be performing. And for those of you that are following along online, you can watch that online as well. I believe from 8 o'clock it will be streamed. And Chris, your point is a good one. It's great to highlight the musical influence in that part of the world. We, of course, miss the White Rabbit Bar, which was a fantastic record store in Bellaire Street. But your suggestions of other stores that we could visit instead this weekend in the city of Melbourne is a really good one. And Record Store Day is a really important time to highlight the importance of music in our city. So I'm glad you've come along and raised that with us tonight.
Great. And can you shout Luke a drink?
No comment.
Okay.
And Councillor Scott, did you want to contribute, given your portfolio interests here?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will just respond in an official capacity, I guess, as Deputy for the Creative and Arts. As you know, the City of Melbourne joins music lovers in celebrating Record Store Day this Saturday. And vinyl, as you know, holds a very close place in our hearts at the city. In fact, we launched our own record label, Heavy Machinery Records, in 2017, mostly utilising our magnificent and very large town hall organ. Our label facilitates the release of City of Melbourne's commissioned music works, with 100% of profits going directly to commissioned artists. So we're very happy, Chris, to send communications that will encourage all of the staff and all of the councillors to visit Rocksteady Records, Northside and Wax Museum Records this weekend and, in fact, every day.
Thank you, Councillor Mark Scott. And I'd like to add that thank you to City of Melbourne and Heavy Machinery Records for supporting Cam Butler and his work with the grand organ. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris. Sorry, Lord
Councillor Camillo.
Yeah, Chris, on behalf of my husband that's a vinyl collector, you don't need to even ask. Every week he's in there in every single store. He disappears from the house and always buying records, and he's always asking for me, what are you doing for record shops in Melbourne? So in my house, I have someone like a little fly all the time. What are you guys going to be doing for records? So I totally support what you're asking today, and I think all the councillors, and as you heard today...
Thanks, Councillor Camillo, for sharing that story. That's wonderful. Indeed, as an inner-city man of a particular age and stage of life, of course, I'll be at a record store as well this weekend, and Rocksteady Records there in Mitchell House is well known. We might even venture out to the Badlands of Yarra Northside Records and see what they're...
I'll just add, I bought a turntable about 18 months ago.
There we go.
Viva Vinyl Revival.
Excellent.
There you go.
Thank
you. You've started a craze here at Town Hall. All right. I now call on the Deputy Lord Mayor, Rashina Campbell, to read out a written question as the planning portfolio lead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to follow that, but luckily I've got a question from Linda Warland. The questions that Linda has for Council are as follows. Despite the introduction of Clause 52.37 to the City of Melbourne's planning scheme on the 15th of September 2025, why does the City of Melbourne lack a formal process and the resources to assess and enforce whether the proposed pruning of canopy trees, as defined in the Act, is appropriate/legal. Please note that the inappropriate practice of lopping is sometimes called pruning by some members of the community, so expert assessment is required. And then a second question, as the city promotes itself as growing the garden city, for example, in the COM draft budget 2026-27, and a city that's a leader in urban forestry, why are mature private trees unprotected unless they are on the city's exceptional tree register? Yet in neighbouring LGAs, such as the City of Yarra, mature private trees are assessed, and canopy trees are protected via permit conditions as required under the Victorian statutory requirement of Clause 52.37. First of all, thank you, Linda, for your very timely question. And you are right, we do indeed work hard every day to make Melbourne the garden city. Dealing first with your question about private canopy trees and the associated protections within the Melbourne planning scheme. The state government introduced clause 52.37 into all Victorian planning schemes on the 15th of September 2025 to provide greater protection of canopy trees on private land. Under this clause, a planning permit is required to remove or lop a canopy tree unless a specific exemption applies. Where concerns are raised by the community, and we encourage community members to raise those concerns, or where unauthorised works are suspected, Council undertakes compliance investigations to determine whether the trees constitute lopping rather than being exempt as minor pruning, whether the tree meets the definition of a canopy tree, and whether a permit was required and obtained. Although this provision is relatively new, Council does have urban forestry and planning compliance officers with the technical expertise to assess, investigate and enforce breaches of the planning scheme. We're also very aware that the term pruning is sometimes used to describe what is in fact inappropriate lopping, and that distinction is carefully assessed by our officers using their expertise. The introduction of clause 52.37 in fact supports Council's existing exceptional tree register, controls and provides additional protection for canopy trees across the municipality. Finally, I would encourage you, Linda, and anyone else who is concerned about potential unauthorised tree works to report them to Council through our website so they can be properly investigated.
Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. I now invite public questions from members of the public. Is anyone in? Please, come on up.
I am John Widmer and I am the Open Space Coordinator and Convener for the Kensington Association, and I acknowledge Kate's accompanying me here. When will the Council come out and join our canoe kayak trip down the Moonee Ponds Creek? We've got it planned and be happy to see you out there because coming up is the master plan for the Moonee Ponds Creek. What's actually happening? Thank you.
John, why don't you remain there while we respond to your questions. The first one is the Moonee Ponds Creek Kayak Day. So if we can arrange for the details of that event to be circulated, I will certainly make sure it gets circulated to all councillors. Sounds like a great day out. In regards to the update around the Moonee Ponds Creek corridor, I look to Councillor David Griffiths, who may wish to respond, given his environment portfolio responsibilities.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. And John, look forward to the invitation to join in the kayaking. I spent a couple of quality hours at Macaulay Station this morning looking at the creek. So I'm certainly, as you know, very familiar with it and very familiar with the work that we're doing right along that extent. Would welcome the opportunity, not just in a kayak, to catch up with you and talk about that in detail. And obviously as part of that, talk about the allocation within this year's draft budget for the new park in Chelmsford Street. I think $6.4 million, which adjoins that land along the Moonee Ponds Creek, is, I think, a clear signal from Council about the importance that we place on open space in that part of the world. So would bring back that and the rest of the work you're asking about if we have the chance to catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Thank you, John, for your interest and passion for the creek. Are there any other questions from the public about anything that's on your mind regarding the City of Melbourne? No. In that case, we will move on to our next agenda item, reports from management. And there are 3 reports from management. The first of those, agenda item 6.1, Melbourne Cleaning and Graffiti Management Outcomes Update. I am looking to see if councillors want a presentation in relation to this item. No. In that case, I will request that a motion please be put on the screen. Here's one that was prepared earlier. Thank you very much for that, team. I'm looking for a mover for that motion. Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gladys Liu. Back to you, Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think this motion is pretty straightforward, so I just got to make a brief comment. So as a portfolio lead for safety and cleaning, I'm pleased to move this item this evening. Tagging and is not a victimless crime. In fact, it's costing the community a significant amount of money and affects how safe and welcome people feel in your city. And that's why we take graffiti and vandalism seriously and work closely with Victoria Police to hold offenders to account. As outlined in the report before us tonight, we will be asking management to approach Victoria Police to seek compensation orders in relation to 2 matters that are currently being prosecuted. These cases involve graffiti vandals whose actions have resulted in an extensive tagging across Melbourne, within a combined estimated cost of in excess of $180,000. Money that could be spending in better areas for our community, such as homeless support or economic development for our city. Tonight's decision is about sending a clear and consistent message that graffiti vandalism is not tolerated in your city. We are drawing a line in the sand. If you force council to spend resources cleaning up your city, we will work with police to hold you accountable and make you pay for your crimes. I commend the motion before us tonight. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. You spray, you pay is not just a slogan. We mean it. We want to use the money, the ratepayers' money, for our community. As the portfolio head for community service, health and city service, I think the money spent on cleaning graffitis is just far too much. Like our portfolio head for cleanliness and safety, Councillor Camillo just mentioned, only these 2 people, what they have been doing. One has done, I understand, is about 40 incidences, and the other one is more than 1,200 times he did it. Can you believe it? This is such a waste of ratepayers' money to clean them up. So definitely we want to work with the police to get this done. And also graffiti has a real impact on how safe and welcoming our city feels for residents, businesses, and visitors alike. So tonight, we are asking officers to work with Victorian Police to pursue compensation orders in relation to the 2 matters outlined in the report before us. And I look forward to receiving the update on the outcome of these matters. So once again, thank you to the officers for your hard work. And we are sending a strong and clear message that graffiti vandalism will not be tolerated in the city of Melbourne.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Would any other councillors like to speak to this agenda item? I might weigh in and just briefly say and put on the record my thanks to Councillor Camillo, Councillor Liu, and to this council. We have really lent in as a group around lifting standards in Melbourne around safety and cleanliness. And indeed, I think it'll be one of the hallmarks of this term of council. very much saying we are all about getting the basics right and investing in those things that make Melbourne more livable. And it all starts with a city that is safe and a city that is clean, that people can look around and feel proud of. To the members of the public, you might hear, you spray, you pay, and it's a good motto, and it really does capture exactly what we're trying to do here. It's about, as a council, saying enough is enough, putting accountability into what we've been seeing happening around the city, creating a powerful new deterrent to get our city cleaned up. What you might not know is that beneath those statements is a huge team effort that's going on here at the City of Melbourne. So I really want to put on the record my gratitude and thanks to the city safety and amenity team, to the waste and recycling teams, to Vince Macalino, to David Thompson and the legal team, to Rick Kwasek, our head of infrastructure, to Tom Robinson, to Dean Robinson, the guys out there on the streets. This has really been a team effort by Melbourne. There's just so much work happening out there to lift standards in this city, and we are, as a council group, really proud of all that hard work that's going on. We are making a real difference out there, and now as we go after the vandals, making them pay for the cost of cleaning up their mess, we're taking things to the next level. So I do hope that this motion will meet with councillor support. Any other councillors want to speak to this? No, in that case, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Councillor, I can declare that carried unanimously. Good. All right. We move on to the next agenda item, 6.2, Westgate Tunnel Impacts Update. And I think councillors would like a presentation in relation to this item. So I'll invite Rick Kwasek, who is our General Manager of Infrastructure and Amenity, to make a brief presentation to us.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and councillors. Through you, the purpose of this report is really to provide councillors and the Future Melbourne Committee with an update on the impacts of the Westgate Tunnel. Next slide, please. First of all, there's been significant feedback from community in the area of North Melbourne in relation to increase in speed since the opening of the Westgate Tunnel, predominantly around Victoria Street. And there was a recent petition to the Future Melbourne Committee, and we've been working with Department of Transport about reducing speeds in that vicinity. The plan shows a reduction in speed limits in Victoria Street between Dryburgh and Curzon Street, which is an arterial road, and that's reduced from 60 kilometres an hour to 50 kilometres an hour, and a proposed reduction of speed between Curzon Street and Dudley Street on King Street, again reducing it from 60 kilometres an hour to 50 kilometres an hour. So it's a key initiative and a key change in the speed limits. The section of Victoria Street between Curzon and Peel Street is a residential street and is already at 40 kilometres an hour. Next slide, please. Just by way of updates in some of the key projects, Hawke Street greening, there was a community consultation undertaken that ran between December and February this year. There is a proposed report coming back to the Future Melbourne Committee on the outcome of that consultation on the 19th of May, and that will provide further information on where we've landed in relation to the Hawke Street greening proposal. In relation to Franklin Street transformation, the designs are continuing, and it's proposed to advertise for tender in early 26-27 financial year, with a view of moving to delivery soon after that. We are still seeking approvals from Melbourne Water in relation to flooding overlays which occur in that area. In relation to the Dynon Road shared user path, that's being delivered in stages, and we're continuing with works from City Road underpass to Lloyd Street, with the second stage proposed between Dynon Road and Lloyd Street, which will be completed in the 26-27 financial year. And in relation to the Spencer Street North Master Plan, there's an internal review being undertaken, and we're proposing to bring back a draft master plan for consideration by the future Melbourne Committee, which will occur later in the 26-27 financial year. Next slide, please. One of the key considerations and what's been occurring since the opening of the Westgate Tunnel is the monitoring of traffic and traffic volumes and speeds in various locations in that North Melbourne precinct and in the areas that are the roadways that are impacted by the Westgate Tunnel. There are two images on that slide. The top image shows speed and traffic movements that have been monitored in the vicinity of Kensington Road, Epsom Road and Macaulay Road. What I can say is there's been an uplift in volumes identified in Kensington Road and Epsom Road, with a slight reduction in volumes in Macaulay Road. We're actually still running through with Department of Transport and Planning the specifics of that monitoring and the specific of the types of and classification of vehicles that are using those roads. This indication here shows one data set, and we're undertaking monitoring almost on a daily basis, but summarising those on a monthly basis. And the indication or the request from DTP is that by June we'll have a sufficient data set to undertake and understand the traffic patterns more clearly. But those images at the bottom show the individual locations of specific data capture, which shows it within that North Melbourne precinct. Next slide, please. In relation to tree replacement, it was broadly covered within the report, but in more detail, the project has removed around 824 trees, which had been committed to being replaced in a 5-to-1 ratio. On the plan, it shows the dotted green areas are the trees that have been removed, and they were replaced along the line of the Westgate project. 824 at a ratio of 5-to-1 is just over 4,000 trees. While the project, the replacement of the trees within the extent of the project will reach a 5-to-1 ratio, that won't be within the City of Melbourne. In 2024, the Minister Pearson wrote to the Lord Mayor committing to identifying additional tree locations within the City of Melbourne to address that initial commitment. Discussions are ongoing with Vita Roads about options in meeting that gap and replacing planting within the City of Melbourne. On the plan there, we show, as part of the urban forest precinct plans, the areas in purple shown on the plan shows opportunities for tree replacement within the City of Melbourne, and we've put that to Vita Roads, and we're seeking either compensation or the opportunity to provide that additional planting. Next slide, please. In relation to next steps, there'll be a publication of a detailed map labelling the Hawke Street services in Hawke Street by the end of April 26. What that means is there are in-ground services within Hawke Street that have meant that a revised greening plan was required, and that's what was consulted on with the community. FMC on the 19th of May will be bringing back the outcome of that consultation. And in relation to Spencer Street North, we'll be coming back to a council or briefing councillors in August 26 on the draft master plan. We'll be continuing speed limit reviews and together with Department of Transport undertaking those changes in Victoria Street by mid-2026 and also proposing to award the construction for Hawke Street and Franklin Streets in late 2026. I believe that's the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Rick. Looking to councillors. Councillor Ball, do you have a question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Rick. Will those dates on that last slide be added to the website?
Yes, we can add those.
Terrific. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Griffiths?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I was going to say, I do have some questions, but I'm conscious as well that we have a public submission, I think, on this, and I might wait for that before I ask my questions.
Okay, that's reasonable. I'm sure Rick will be happy to return to the lectern if required, but I think Councillor Owen, sorry, Rick, before you do return to your seat, Councillor Owen Guest has also got a question.
No rest for the wicked, Rick. Just two questions. Firstly, the data that you'll be using, could you just, meet my concerns? We'll be using proper localised data and you won't be relying on sort of statewide... Excellent.
No, there are traffic counters in all of those locations identified. Yes.
Thank you. You probably know why I asked that. And the follow-up, I'm just interested to the extent that we're perhaps trying to discourage trucks from going down various pathways. Can you explain why we'd use both of, I suppose, either no trucks in certain streets as well as reducing the speed limit? I would have thought perhaps one or the other.
There are certain streets identified as truck routes. There's a national vehicle regulator that regulates heavy vehicle movement. We'll be seeking exemptions from certain streets and we'll be proposing to bring something back at a later date in relation to those exemptions. But there are certain options, whether that be signage or registration with the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator or exemptions from certain streets. So they're the options that are available to us.
Sorry, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Andrew Rouse, over to you.
Just a quick question in relation to the vehicle counters on and around Macaulay Road. I think you said there'd been no increase thus far seen on Macaulay Road. Does that speak to the capacity of the road? And I guess my question there is, anyone who's been around Macaulay Road knows often at times with the two-level rail crossings, you physically can't drive onto the road. So therefore, it would seem logical that not seeing an increase doesn't mean the road isn't being used. It likely explains that the road's already at 100% capacity. Can you perhaps expand on that and what will the data tell us in relation to capacity of the roads, not just number of vehicles on the road?
Specifically to the question, it relates to the raw data, not relating to capacity. Certain roads, arterial roads, have certain capacity that is determined by the road itself. What they'll be doing with the data and what we'll be doing is assessing that data against data that was collected prior to the Westgate Tunnel opening. So that gives us a baseline comparator. And with that, we can look at how the impact is or how the tunnel has impacted the road network. That's basically the process undertaken.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Thank you, Rick. I don't think there's any further questions at this stage, but stand ready because there may be further questions to come. All right, I now call on Dr. Kate Kennedy from the Kensington Association, who requested the opportunity to address the committee in relation to this matter. Welcome back to Town Hall, Kate. Just a reminder to please speak for no more than 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and councillors. Thank you for this time and for that report. So we also appreciate the work that you're doing in looking at this matter, which is besieged us in Kensington. We do feel that we sort of have felt a little bit on the periphery of this sort of matter. We've been members of the Westgate Tunnel Community Liaison Project and submissions made since 2016. We were indicating that we did feel that rat running would become an issue here because it's something, and truck safety is something that's been very much close to the residents of Kensington for some time, seeing that we've lived with some fairly tragic truck accidents over the years, 3 in particular, 2 resulting in deaths and 1 with someone who is a quadriplegic and still lives in our neighbourhood. So we're very sensitive to this matter and we have a lot of citizen recorders if you need any help with trying to identify trucks, because the neighbourhood has become obsessed with photographing trucks and posting them on our Facebook page, which has then brought out some liaison for us with the Maribyrnong Truck Action Group, who are after 20 years and have fought some fairly strong battles in terms of their areas from the West, are giving us some advice. Thank you for the counters, but I do believe they were removed last week, and there does seem to be sort of strange influxes of traffic, and some days are much worse than others. So last week in Macaulay Road, and one advantage of taking photographs in Macaulay Road is you get to look at the sit in a cafe and take photos of trucks, but there was quite a strong incidence of very heavy vehicles going in Macaulay Road. The second thing of major concern is there's strong signs of road damage appearing in Macaulay Road, and that was a site that there was quite an infamous sewer collapse about 30 years ago of the historic sewers, which took some time. So people are quite sensitive to that. And we also had a sinkhole opening up in Macaulay Road last year. So there are signs of wear and tear, and I think it's beyond the 402 bus at this point, we can say. And the other one, which has come up as an anomaly, is we do have technically a truck ban in Kensington, but the truck ban is for trucks under the 3.7 height limit, so which says trucks over 3.7 are eligible to go on Macaulay Road. So this seems like a contradiction in the point, and that truck ban, when you think about it, it's actually a deterrent for trucks who are avoiding getting themselves stuck under the Newmarket rail bridge, which is 3.7, which in fact is still happening. There was one 2 weeks ago. So we do feel that maybe the truck ban is something that could be reviewed in terms of its impact and its effect on our neighbourhood, because we are getting a lot of very oversized trucks. And I think in my submission, I must apologise for my submission because I late night uploaded a first draft, so I'm not sure if I can submit an amended copy from that. It's just repeat of paragraphs, if that's okay. So thank you. They're our concerns, our three concerns.
All right, thank you, Kate, and thanks for your efforts through the Kensington Association on this matter in particular. Are there any questions for Kate from councillors? I'm going to ask Rick in a moment about the 3 points. Actually, I might just follow it up now, if that's okay. The 3.7 metre height restriction in Macaulay Road, that seems an anomaly that's in place there. Can you explain?
I can't directly explain, although the issue with the trucks is certainly identified and recognised that it's an area of concern. So we are specifically looking at truck volumes in Epsom, Macaulay and Kensington Road. The data that we're collecting will look at classes of vehicles. So it will look at all various classes, and the vehicles over 3.7 are classified under that class 11 and class 12 vehicles, the B doubles and the larger sort of vehicles. So we are specifically looking at that data, and we'll be looking at seeing what is the percentage of trucks that have increased in those three roads specifically, we'll certainly be looking at ways to mitigate that. But I can look into that, the specific ban on Macaulay Road, and identify that in some of the data that we're.
Just a historic note, we have gone through zoning, so we were a light industrial mixed zone use down there, so there was a lot of light industrial with other trucks. So I think the neighbourhood has changed as well in terms of access and truck use.
All right, thank you, Kate, for that submission. Thank you, Rick, for the response. Councillor Griffiths, did you indicate you had some further questions you were going to ask after public submissions?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've got sort of two topics, but hopefully the answers are relatively brief. I note in the report that's come, there's no reference to the protected bike lanes that are being built out on Macaulay Road at the moment, and perhaps just for completeness, especially for people who are watching at home, Rick, could you just give us an explanation of the work that's being done there under the TAP program?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Griffiths. The bike lanes are being converted from painted bike lanes to separated bike lanes. and it's taking both sections of Macaulay Road with some intersection treatments there as well to address some of the safety concerns. So that's the intention of the works.
And will there be a reduction in speed once that's been completed?
That has been considered, and the intention is to reduce speed as well.
Thank you for that. I think that's a step in the whole process. I was wondering if we could perhaps go back to the slides in the presentation regarding the trees. Yes, that one I think you're about to click on there. And thank you for providing that information. I think the intent of what we've been discussing today about where those trees have been removed from and potentially where they could be returned to. I'm obviously a fan from the environment portfolio point of view of planting trees wherever we can within the city, but some of those parts of the city look to be a reasonable distance from the places that the trees have been removed. And so I'm interested to hear what work we as council have done to try and find places that the trees can be planted that would ameliorate the effects that the removal had on the removal of the trees in particular parts of the suburb, which I know was referenced in other parts of the documentation we've been looking at.
Thank you, Councillor. We have identified those areas as part of the precinct plans because that's a sort of a standing strategy that we have in relation to tree planting. So it provided an opportunity for us to look for offset planting within the City of Melbourne. In and around the Westgate Tunnel project, it seems as though there's limited opportunities in the specific areas of the Westgate Tunnel. However, there may be opportunities within some of the open space development to actually include additional tree planting or to at least offset the tree planting that's occurring in those areas. So we will look for those opportunities within and around the areas where the trees were removed to try and offset that outcome.
All right. Thank you for that response, Rick. There are no other submitters on this item, so I'm going to now request that a motion be put on the screen. There is a motion that is being drafted by management and then which I don't believe there is a mover or a seconder for. So I will request that a alternative resolution be put up, please. And we'll just scroll down slowly through that if we can, just to ensure that that is the right motion. Yep, there is those additional. Yep. Yeah, I haven't. All right, so I'm going to move that motion there. I'm looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Camillo. And we might just leave that on the screen as it is at the moment. So, look, it goes without saying that a safe and well-managed transport network is central to how people experience a city, and it shapes amenity, safety, local access, and the very livability of our neighbourhoods and our overall city. This council committed to the community to stay on top of the Westgate Tunnel's impacts through construction and after opening. And since opening, the tunnel has already carried more than 1 million vehicles through the inbound and outbound tunnels, with more than 20% of those trips having been trucks. That scale matters because it affects how traffic spreads through the inner city streets and has changed pressure points for our neighbourhoods. We are still within the planned 6-month post-opening monitoring period, where we are working with the Department of Transport to monitor these traffic increases. But it is fair to say that at these very early stages, but we are now a number of months in to the opening of this project, and we are seeing very significant changes to traffic flows through this municipality. And in particular, we have seen very significant changes in truck movements around the inner city. And we're not talking here about the trucks that deliver groceries, parcels and meals to our homes. We're talking here about big trucks, B-doubles, huge vehicles travelling through what are inner city neighbourhoods and having a very significant impact upon the amenity of those areas. We're also seeing this being quite widespread from Kensington to Macaulay, through West Melbourne, North Melbourne and Carlton. You talk to all the resident groups across those areas, talk to people who live in those areas like I do, and the story is coming through loud and clear. So this motion that is before us this evening is a considerable strengthening of what was previously put, and it does a number of very important things. The first thing I want to call out is that we are requesting management to investigate and provide a report and advice to council on the changes in vehicle movements, particularly heavy vehicles since the opening of the Westgate Tunnel. So we need to get that. We need to ensure that we get that additional specificity around the types of vehicles that we are seeing through those inner city streets. We also want to see advice on what potential roads within the City of Melbourne could be made 24/7 no truck zones. So it's notable that upon the opening of the Westgate Tunnel, we had a number of roads through the western suburbs of Melbourne, through the city of Maribyrnong, which were made no truck zones. Francis Street, Somerville Road in Yarraville, Buckley Street in Footscray, Moore Street in Footscray as well, Hudson's Road, Blackshaw's Road in Altona North. So a number of very significant roads at the western end of the Westgate Tunnel were made 24/7 no truck roads when this project opened. We have not seen the same thing happen at the east end of the Westgate Tunnel. And I think we need to ask the question, what roads in the municipality of the City of Melbourne, what roads at the east end of the Westgate Tunnel should be considered for being 24/7 no truck roads. The next thing goes to additional streets where speed limits should be reduced. So in this report that's before us tonight, we note that on Victoria Street and King Street, we are seeing sorry, I want to make sure I get that right. We are seeing a reduction in the speed limit from 60 kilometres an hour to 50 kilometres an hour, and that's a good thing. But this motion asks for advice from management on what further roads across the City of Melbourne should be subject to speed reductions so that we can reduce the impact of heavy vehicle movements on our local neighbourhoods. We don't want the City of Melbourne to become the rat run centre of Australia, with these trucks cutting across our municipality in record numbers as a result of this new project. We have a duty to protect our community, to protect our neighbourhoods, and maintain that livability that we are so famous for. And so this motion does a large number of things, and I've covered off on a couple of them. I know we're going to hear from other councillors on trees and some other matters, so I'll leave that to other councillors to speak to. Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm going to be very brief because I think a lot of the topics that I'm going to talk here already being explained to the community. So first of all, I'd like to thank you, everyone that made the submissions, not only today, but previously, because this has been going on. And since the opening of the Westgate Tunnel in 2025, we are beginning to see clear changes across our transport network. More than 1 million vehicles having traveled through the tunnel in both directions. However, I myself heard in person going to some with the community there and some residents' concerns about speed limits and safety in neighbourhood areas. And I welcome the ongoing collaboration with the Department of Transport and Planning to address these concerns. I really agree that some of the areas needs to reduce the speed limit. But as some of the subministers might have raised, the impact of the tunnel is also having an effect on issues such as rat running on local streets. The motion before is very clear. Ask officers to investigate the changes in vehicle movements since the opening of the tunnel and identify roads that may be suitable for future no truck zones. I thank officers for the work on day-to-day, and I really look forward for some of the streets reduce the speed limit, and thank you for Rick, the close work you have been doing with the Department of Transport, and I know that Lord Mayor is constantly advocating with state government too in our portfolio meetings, and I thank officers for today, and back to you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. Would any other councillors like to speak to this alternative motion? Councillor Olivia Ball.
On the contrary, I would like to make 2 further amendments, please. Can I suggest these? And I've already submitted them to council business. There they are. And that is the correct numbering. The 4th clause there, that is to say 1.3.4.4 was previously a higher level, and that is, I think, the correct, because it comes under the report that we're requesting those 4 clauses. So these 2 suggestions. Should I speak to this now, or will we seek a seconder?
Why don't we seek a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Back to you, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Thank you, Lord Mayor. So these 2 additions in blue are in response to the submission from the Kensington Association, and I thank Dr Kennedy for her submission tonight. Just to add, seeking in this report, which is the 4th clause of this new alternate motion, advice from our officers on the impact of these heavy vehicles, not just how is traffic changing in the 6 months that's being measured, but can they give us advice in July on the impact on safety, amenity and road damage, as Dr Kennedy mentioned, and further concerning her point about the anomalies between what trucks are and are not permitted and where, I just wanted to add there commissioning a review of existing truck signage and exemptions, and that is the extent of these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Happy to support this. Finding potholes on roads across Melbourne has become a bit of a national sport as of recently, and whilst Team Melbourne does a phenomenal job, I think it's only reasonable that we do everything we can to try and protect that damage from occurring in the first place. So more than happy to support this amendment, and thank you to the Kensington Residents Association for their submission and the images where you can see the existing damage already occurring.
All right, thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendments? No, in that case, we'll put the amendments to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Those amendments are carried. All right, we now continue debate on the amended alternative motion. Are there any other councillors wish to speak to what is before us? Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And first of all, can I add my thanks to the many submitters, both Dr Kennedy, who attended tonight, and the many people who wrote to us about their views on this motion and this matter as well. It's a very good example of the passion that we know exists right throughout the community, and certainly is representative of a large number of conversations that I know we've all been having lately, particularly following on from Ben Herbert's petition that we received recently from Kensington residents, and I took the time to meet with him on behalf of the petitioners. And Lord Mayor, you didn't call out yourself, so I'm going to call out the fact that you and I were also out on Macaulay Road recently, seeing much of this with our own eyes and talking to some of the families who've been affected by trucks and the tragedies that have occurred in Kensington. So thank you for your sincere interest in those matters. It's good to see in the report that we have before us tonight that there have been some steps, I think we'd all agree relatively small steps, in moving forward with ameliorating the effects of trucks through North and West Melbourne and Kensington. And I'm grateful to Rick Kwasik for giving us some of those details about Macaulay Road, and perhaps we're already starting to see some of the effects of those bike lanes in the movements that were described. But very clearly, as all of the petitioners have said, and all of the submitters have said, there's still a large amount of work that needs to be done. And I think it's very good that we've got this motion before us that sets out the expectations of councillors and the timeframes that we want to see work being done in order for us to make further decisions and suggestions. I will, again, with my head portfolio of environment hat on, talk about the trees matter briefly. And I think it's good that we've got some changes in the motion that we've put forward as councillors here that directly ask the question about how we meet that 5-to-1 ratio, and that we're calling for that ratio to be met across the municipality. My challenge, my provocation to our officers would be to really fulfil the spirit, I think, of what the previous correspondence that we've had with ministers from state bears out, which is that those residents who have been affected and had their amenity reduced by trees being removed are the ones who benefit from the tree plantings. And in that map that we've got before us, we can see tree plantings across the municipality. We should be doing those as part of our 3,000 trees a year, but let's ensure that those residents who've been affected by tree removals are most affected by the opening of the tunnel are the ones who benefit from these plantings. And I think there's some more work, and I look forward to that coming back through portfolio and through this forum as well. So thank you in advance to officers for the work that we're asking you to do through this motion, and thank you for all that you've done so far.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Would any other councillors like to speak to this motion? Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I really want to thank our officers for bringing us this report. I think it will be of great interest to residents affected. We know that there is a huge level of community concern about the impacts of the Westgate Tunnel, and that concern has been shared by Council for a very long time. So thank you for this report, and also thank you to the Lord Mayor and Councillor Camillo for moving the alternate motion tonight. The original motion, as published, gave us the good news of the speed limit reduction intended by the Department of Transport. And thank you to Rick for clarifying where those reductions are intended to occur in Victoria Street and King Street. I would encourage anyone who would like to review Rick's presentation via the video that's available after the meeting on our website. But this alternate motion also highlights some further concerns that are included in the report and which we wanted to emphasise and seek further advice on. And those three main things in this alternate report being, other than the speed, and in discussion of local roads and speeds, of course, our award-winning transport strategy makes clear that all local roads should be no more than 40 kilometres per hour, and that is our objective as a council on all our local roads. The second main issue raised in this alternate motion tonight is tree replacement of the very large number of trees that were cut down to make way for the tunnel. 824 trees were lost, and the state government had promised the community a replacement of 5 to 1 for every tree that was cut down. Of course, a replacement tree cannot be equivalent to a mature tree until it matures, so it takes time, and the expanded replacement is some compensation, I suppose, for the loss of those trees. So to find in this report that the state government finds that it cannot achieve or does not intend to achieve that 5 to 1 promised replacement ratio is of great concern. So thank you for this motion that will seek advice on how we can, in fact, achieve that promise of the state to the community. And thirdly, of course, the issue of trucks, which is of great concern to residents in a number of our suburbs, and the impact of the Westgate Tunnel on truck movements. So thank you for that motion, and we look forward to further advice on the 19th of May with regard to Hawke Street greening. This new report we can expect in July as a consequence of this motion dealing with trucks, trees and speed limits, and then the further activities that Rick foreshadowed in his slideshow. I'm very happy to support this alternate motion, and I thank my colleagues for their support for the amendments.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ball. Any other councillor? Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just have a question arising out of that. Alison or Rick, is it true that the council has an objective or a policy to see all local roads reduced to 40 kilometres per hour? I was unaware of that. I'm not sure if my colleagues...
I think I could answer that, and from the top of my head, I think it's page 11 of our Transport Strategy 2030.
Rick or Alison, did you want to add to that?
It is part of the transport strategy that we assess trees across the local road... roads. Sorry, we're having a tree conversation. Roads across the local network. We're doing that in a staged approach. So we're assessing area by area, and we've got a program that's supported by Department of Transport around local roads within the whole municipality to look at reducing them to 40. So it's in line with the transport strategy.
All right. Would any of the councillors like to speak to the motion that is before us? I'm sort of seeing Councillor Rouse seemingly indicating that he
ask a question to clarify Rick's comments there in terms of, can you define the local road?
There are several definitions of roads. Arterial roads are managed by Department of Transport and Planning. Local roads are managed by City of Melbourne. I guess you almost need to see them on a plan. If you refer back to the plan that was part of the presentation, that provides a definition of, or a visual representation of arterial roads versus local roads. There's a colour definition of arterials.
It's for the public at home. Can you clarify in arterial road what's the speed limit? Because now we broad the subject, we need to.
The speed limit on arterial roads varies depending on where that is, and it'll go from 60 upwards and reduced in some areas for school zones and other things. So it does have a variable speed limit, but predominantly 60 and upwards.
All right, thank you for that. Rick, do any of the councillors want to speak to this item? In that case, I'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. Okay, we move on to our next agenda item, 6.3, Councillor Travel to 2026 Chengdu International Friendship Cities Cooperation and Development Conference. Would councillors like a presentation in relation to this item? No?
No, but
Do you have a conflict you wish to declare
Yes,
as a
Lord Mayor.
recipient of this?
I would like to declare a material conflict as I may gain or lose by the decision of the councillors today and as a beneficiary of this trip that is subject to the motion now. So I'll be leaving it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Camillo. We'll give you a moment. All right, I'm going to request that we put a motion on the screen in relation to this item. Thank you. I'm happy to move that. I'm looking for a seconder. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'll now speak to this item. The City of Melbourne has a very good relationship with a number of major Chinese cities. We have the long-standing sister city relationship with Tianjin, and we have a friendship city investigation underway in relation to Chengdu. In this case, we've been invited by the Chengdu Municipal Government to participate in the Chengdu International Friendship Cities Cooperation and Development Conference. Chengdu, for those who don't know, is one of the major cities in West China. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the world. It's a city that I believe now has 11 direct flights to Melbourne each week, and it's a huge source of new investment, new people, new cultural connections to our city, and the relationship between Melbourne and Chengdu is one that is absolutely flourishing in a really positive way for both cities. So it makes perfect sense for Councillor Camillo to attend this conference on our behalf. I also understand that the flights there and back, accommodation and most meals to be funded by the conference organiser, so there is minimal cost to the City of Melbourne ratepayers. So I find it very easy to support this motion. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much for that, Lord Mayor. I am also delighted to support this motion, and I thank Councillor Camillo for putting his hand up to go on this trip. It is an important opportunity for international engagement, but it is also an important opportunity to further some of the priority policies of this council. I note that Councillor Camillo will be speaking about an issue close to his heart, that is infrastructure, which he has the deputy portfolio responsibility for, and will also be undertaking a number of site visits and meetings relevant to other portfolio area interests beyond infrastructure, including street cleaning, which all of us here at Town Hall know is a very large passion for him. And importantly, as you've identified, Lord Mayor, this trip is at very, very minimal expense to Council, with conference organisers providing return flights, accommodation and most meals. In those circumstances, I commend this motion to my councillor colleagues.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Would any other councillors like to speak to this item? Councillor Gladys Liu.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to say, when I saw the initial invitation from Chengdu, the content of this conference was a little bit thin. So, but I'm very glad that our officers here have been able to put in a lot of to be confirmed events, and I'm sure this is the hard work of our officers trying to make the most of Councillor Camillo's time in Chengdu. And knowing Councillor Camillo, I know he will spend his every waking hour there shaking a lot of hands, giving out a lot of business cards, searching for a lot of opportunities for the City of Melbourne. So I'm very happy to support this as well.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Liu. Any other speakers to this item? Councillor Owen Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just because I know I've had a little bit to say about travel at Council in the past, which whilst I stand by it, I can support this one. I think I'd call out Councillor Raf Camillo, I think he self-funded 2 trips so far during his term on council, and this one isn't going to cost council at all. So I hope there is some value. I'd also reiterate Raf's passion for Melbourne, for infrastructure, for all of the things that will be going on here. So on that basis, I can support this motion.
All right, thank you, Councillor Guest. Any other speakers to this item? Councillor Ball.
I think there are some incidental costs.
From what I've been aware, they would sum to a few $100s, and if that's the case, I'm content to still support the motion.
I can confirm that that is the case. So with that point clarified, I think I'm going to put this matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand, and I declare that carried unanimously. Okay, can we please invite Councillor Camillo to rejoin the meeting, and we will move on to our next item of business because we have concluded reports from management. So we move on to agenda item 9, public questions, and another 15-minute period has been provided for members of the public to ask questions. Any questions you would like, as long as they're not greater than 90 seconds in duration. Are there any members of the public who wish to ask us any further questions? This is democracy in the round. How good is this? All right. I don't believe there's any further questions. In that case, we will move on to agenda item 10, closure of the open meeting and indeed closure of tonight's meeting. So I wish to thank members of the public for their interest and attendance and declare this meeting closed at 6:40 p.m. Thank you, one and all.